The evening air carried a hint of autumn as Lily hurried through the staff entrance of the Sterling Hotel. She was running 5 minutes late for her shift, something her supervisor, Mr. Chen, never failed to notice. Balancing college classes with double shifts at the hotel's upscale restaurant wasn't easy, but the tips helped pay for her music theory textbooks and piano lessons. "Almost didn't make it," whispered Thomas, another server, as Lily tied her black apron around her waist. The Richardson party arrived early. "Big spenders tonight." Lily nodded gratefully for the heads up. "Thanks. Any special instructions?" "Just the usual. Extra attentive service and make sure the champagne never stops flowing." Thomas rolled his eyes slightly. "Oh, and the host is apparently that tech guy. You know, the billionaire who's always in the news." Lily's heartbeat quickened. Everyone on staff knew about Robert Winters, founder of Nextech Industries and notorious for being equally generous with tips and criticism. His parties were legendary both for their extravagance and his unpredictable demands. "Table 9 is yours," called Mr. Chen, giving Lily a pointed look as she emerged from the back. "Try not to drop anything tonight." Lily forced a smile, remembering how she'd accidentally spilled water on a guest last week. She took a deep breath and headed toward the private dining section where soft lighting cast a golden glow over tables draped in crisp, white linens. A grand piano sat in the corner of the room, an elegant centerpiece that was rarely played except on weekend evenings when the hotel hired a professional pianist. As she approached table 9, Lily kept her posture straight and her expression pleasant. 8 guests were already seated, engaged in animated conversation, but the 9th chair, at the head of the table, remained empty. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Welcome to the Sterling. May I offer you our selection of aperitifs while you wait?" A woman with silver-streaked hair glanced up. "Mr. Winters is on an important call. He suggested we start with the Cristal." Lily nodded, walking away to retrieve the champagne. As she carefully arranged flutes on her tray, she hummed softly to herself, a habit that helped calm her nerves before serving important guests. The melody was from a piece she'd been practicing for weeks, a Chopin nocturne that her piano teacher insisted would help develop her technique. When she returned with the champagne, the missing guest had arrived. Robert Winters didn't match the image Lily had formed from news articles and magazine covers. He was shorter than she expected, with laugh lines around his eyes that softened his otherwise serious expression. His voice carried across the room as he described some technological breakthrough to his captivated audience. Lily moved silently around the table, pouring champagne with practiced precision. She had nearly finished when Mr. Winters paused mid-sentence. "That melody," he said suddenly, looking directly at Lily. "What were you humming just now?" Lily froze, mortified that she'd been caught. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize—" "No, don't apologize. It's Chopin, isn't it? Nocturne in E-flat major?" Surprised by his knowledge, Lily nodded. "Yes, sir." "Interesting choice for a server," he remarked, studying her with newfound curiosity. His guests exchanged glances, some amused, others uncomfortable with the interruption. "I study music at the community college," Lily explained, wishing she could disappear. Servers weren't supposed to become part of the conversation. Mr. Winters nodded thoughtfully before returning to his previous discussion. Lily retreated to the kitchen, hoping the interaction wouldn't cost her job. Mr. Chen gave her a warning look but said nothing. The dinner service progressed smoothly. Lily moved efficiently between kitchen and dining room, serving course after course of the chef's specially prepared menu. Throughout the meal, she noticed Mr. Winters glancing in her direction occasionally, making her increasingly nervous. As dessert was being served, the conversation at table 9 turned to music. One of the guests mentioned a recent symphony performance, and soon they were discussing favorite composers. "Classical music is becoming a lost art," remarked an older gentleman. "Young people today have no appreciation for it." "I disagree," said Mr. Winters, leaning back in his chair. "Talent exists everywhere, often where we least expect it." His eyes drifted toward Lily, who was arranging coffee cups nearby. By 11 o'clock, the formal dinner had concluded, but the party showed no signs of ending. Guests moved around the room with fresh drinks, breaking into smaller conversation groups. Lily cleared the last of the dessert plates, her feet aching after hours of standing. "The piano adds such elegance to the room," commented a woman in a red dress, running her fingers lightly over the closed lid. "Does anyone ever play it?" The hotel brings in a pianist on weekends, Lily answered politely. What a shame to let it sit silent tonight, the woman said with a sigh. Mr. Winters, who had been conversing nearby, turned toward them. His expression brightened as if struck by a sudden idea. You, he called, pointing directly at Lily. You play, don't you? The room grew quieter as people turned to watch. Lily felt her cheeks flush with heat. I'm just a student, sir, she said quietly. And I'm working. I'm well aware, he replied with a slight smile. But I'm curious. We have this beautiful instrument and someone who studies piano. It seems like an opportunity. Mr. Chen appeared at Lily's side, clearly concerned about the situation. Mr. Winters, our staff isn't usually... I understand, Mr. Winters interrupted smoothly. But I'm hosting this event and I'd like to hear your server play. Just one piece. He turned to Lily. Unless you're afraid to perform. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs. She'd performed in student recitals and classroom settings, but never for a room full of wealthy strangers. The thought was terrifying. I couldn't possibly, she began. I'll make it worth your while, Mr. Winters continued, pulling out his wallet. $500 for one song. A murmur rippled through the room. Mr. Chen looked torn between hotel policy and pleasing an important client. Sir, that's very generous, but Lily tried again. $1,000, Mr. Winters stated firmly. $1,000 for 5 minutes of your time. The amount was staggering. Nearly a month's rent. Lily glanced at Mr. Chen, who gave a resigned nod. It's your choice, her supervisor said quietly. Around the room, guests waited expectantly. Some looked amused by the unusual entertainment. Others seemed embarrassed for her. The woman in the red dress whispered something to her companion, both of them glancing at Lily with skeptical expressions. Mr. Winters stood waiting, his expression unreadable. Was this genuine interest or just another wealthy person's whim, treating service workers like personal entertainment? Lily couldn't tell, but the challenge stirred something inside her. Music was her passion, her dream. And wasn't this why she practiced endless hours after exhausting shifts? One song, she agreed finally, setting down her serving tray. As she walked toward the piano, the room fell silent. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Glasses stopped clinking. Even the kitchen staff peered through the service door to watch. Lily sat down on the bench, adjusting its height slightly. The polished black piano gleamed under the soft lighting. She placed her hands on the cool keys, suddenly aware of her plain black uniform and practical shoes amid the designer clothes and diamonds surrounding her. Mr. Winters leaned against a nearby column, arms crossed, watching intently. The rest of the guests formed a loose semicircle around the piano. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. She had never felt more out of place or more determined to prove herself. Her fingers hovered over the keys as she made a split-second decision about what to play. Something told her that this moment mattered more than she could possibly understand. Lily's hands trembled slightly as they hovered above the piano keys. The weight of every stair in the room pressed against her back. Someone coughed. A glass clinked. The soft murmur of a skeptical whisper reached her ears. This should be interesting, a man's voice said, not quite quietly enough. Lily took a deep breath and began to play. She chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, not the most technically difficult piece she knew, but one that allowed for emotional expression. Her fingers found the familiar opening notes, tentative at first, like someone testing the temperature of water before diving in. The first few measures were shaky. Her left hand missed a note and she winced internally. The restaurant's piano was better maintained than the worn practice room instruments at school, but it felt different under her fingers. More responsive, less forgiving. From the corner of her eye, Lily caught Mr. Winters' expression. He was watching with analytical interest, head slightly tilted as if evaluating a potential investment. The woman in the red dress whispered something to her companion, both smiling with the smug anticipation of witnessing a failure. Something shifted inside Lily. A familiar calm began to settle over her, the same feeling that always came after the initial nervousness of performance. The restaurant, the guests, even the $1,000 offer, all began to fade. There was only the music now. Her posture straightened. Her touch became more confident. The gentle melody flowed more naturally as she leaned into the piece, allowing the music to breathe. The soft, contemplative notes floated across the dining room, creating a stark contrast to the earlier buzz of conversation and clinking glasses. Mr. Chen stood near the kitchen door, arms crossed, expression slowly shifting from worry to surprise. Two servers paused their work to listen. At a nearby table, an elderly couple who had been dining separately from the private party turned in their seats to watch. As Lily reached the middle section of the piece, where the composition deepens and grows more complex, she closed her eyes. This was the part she loved most, where Debussy created a sense of moonlight rippling across water. Her right hand cascaded through the arpeggios while her left provided the steady, grounding bass notes. Mr. Winters moved closer to the piano. His earlier smugness had been replaced by genuine curiosity. He leaned against the glossy black surface, watching Lily's hands move across the keys with increasing grace. The challenge he had issued as casual entertainment was becoming something else entirely. Halfway through the piece, the room had fallen completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had quieted. The usual clattering of dishes and pans temporarily paused. The woman in the red dress had stopped smirking. A young man who had been checking his phone throughout dinner now stared at Lily, his device forgotten in his hand. One of the older guests, a distinguished-looking gentleman with silver hair, closed his eyes and nodded slightly with the rhythm, clearly familiar with the piece. His wife reached for his hand, a small gesture of shared appreciation. Lily was no longer the invisible server who had been pouring their champagne and clearing their plates. The black uniform that had made her blend into the background now contrasted dramatically with her role as the center of attention. Her hands, which had been carefully balancing trays all evening, now created something beautiful that couldn't be bought even by the wealthiest person in the room. As she approached the final section of the piece, where the melody returns to its original simplicity, Lily allowed herself to look up briefly. What she saw almost made her lose her place. Every face was turned toward her, expressions ranging from surprise to admiration. Mr. Winters stood completely still, champagne glass forgotten in his hand, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that suggested he was re-evaluating something fundamental. The last notes lingered in the air, soft and delicate. Lily's hands remained poised above the keys for a moment after the sound faded. The silence that followed felt almost sacred, that rare, perfect moment when a room full of people share a single experience of beauty. Then the applause began. It started with the elderly man who had recognized the piece, joined quickly by his wife. The rest of the guests followed, first hesitantly, then with genuine enthusiasm. Even Mr. Chen was clapping, his usual stern expression softened by unexpected pride. Lily's cheeks flushed as she stood from the piano bench, suddenly self-conscious again. She smoothed her apron, unsure what to do next. Should she return to serving? Say something? The normal protocols of her job offered no guidance for this situation. Mr. Winters approached her, his expression unreadable. The room quieted again, anticipating his reaction. He was known for his bluntness, his exacting standards. Had she met his challenge sufficiently? That, he said simply, was not what I expected. Lily swallowed hard. I'm sorry if it wasn't. No, he interrupted, shaking his head. I mean, it was far better. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. You've more than earned this. He extended a crisp bill, not the promised $1,000, but $5,000. Lily stared at it, unable to move. I can't accept that much, she said quietly. You can and you will, he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Talent deserves recognition. He placed the money on the piano. But I'm curious, you play at that level, yet you're working double shifts here. Why? The other guests leaned in slightly, equally curious. For the first time that evening, they were seeing her as a person with a story, not just someone who brought their food. Tuition, Lily answered honestly, and rent, and piano lessons. Life is expensive and music school is more expensive. Mr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. Which school? City College for now. I'm trying to save enough to audition for the conservatory next year, but... She stopped herself, suddenly aware that she was sharing personal details with strangers who hadn't asked for her life story. But what? Pressed the woman in the red dress, her earlier condescension replaced by genuine interest. Lily hesitated. The application fees alone are steep. Then there's the cost of private coaching to prepare for auditions, new recordings, transportation to interviews. She shrugged. It adds up. The silver-haired man who had recognized the piece stepped forward. "I'm on the board at the conservatory," he said. "We have scholarship programs for exceptional talents." "I know," Lily replied. "I've looked into them. The competition isn't intimidating." "It should be," he agreed with a slight smile. "Excellence always is. But having heard you play, I'd say you have reason to be confident." Mr. Winters was watching this exchange with interest. He picked up his champagne glass and tapped it gently with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose something," he announced. The room focused on him immediately. He was, after all, the host and the person everyone had come to impress or do business with. A toast to unexpected talent and to the reminder that we should look beyond appearances. Glasses were raised around the room. Lily stood awkwardly, unsure if she should return to work or remain by the piano. "And," Mr. Winters continued, "I have a business proposition." Mr. Chen stepped forward, protective of his employee. "Sir, perhaps this could wait until after our service is complete." "This concerns your service," Mr. Winters replied smoothly. He turned back to Lily. "What's your name?" "Your full name." "Lily Bennett," she answered. "Well, Ms. Bennett, I host events regularly. Corporate gatherings, charity fundraisers, private parties. Would you consider playing at these events? Professionally, as a pianist, not a server." The offer hung in the air. Lily's mind raced through the implications. Paid performances would mean less time working at the restaurant. More time to practice, maybe enough extra money to afford proper audition preparation. She began, struggling to find the right words. "That's very generous, but I'm still learning. I'm not a professional." "Yet," corrected the silver-haired board member. "You're not a professional yet." The woman in the red dress stepped closer. "Robert never makes business offers unless he sees potential profit." "Take it as the compliment it is," Mr. Winters nodded. "My assistant can work out the details with you. We'll start with appropriate compensation for tonight's performance. Beyond that rather inadequate cash tip." He gestured to the money still sitting on the piano. "Consider it a down payment." Lily felt overwhelmed. 10 minutes ago, she had been invisibly serving these people their dessert. Now they were discussing her future as if it actually mattered to them. "Thank you," she managed to say. "I would be honored to consider your offer." Mr. Winters seemed satisfied. "Excellent. Now I believe we were promised one song and you delivered beautifully." He turned to the other guests. "Shall we continue our evening?" The spell broke and the party resumed its normal rhythm. Conversations restarted, though now with occasional glances toward Lily as she returned to her duties. Something fundamental had changed. She felt it in the way guests made eye contact with her now, the way they thanked her when she refilled their water glasses. As she passed the kitchen, Mr. Chen touched her arm lightly. "That was quite something," he said, his usual gruffness softened. "Don't forget to come in for your regular shift tomorrow, though. At least until your new career as a concert pianist takes off." Lily smiled, catching the rare hint of humor from her boss. "I wouldn't miss it," she promised. But as she continued her work, her mind kept returning to the piano, to the feeling of the music flowing through her fingers, and to the moment when she realized that every person in that room was truly listening. For the first time, her dream felt like more than just a dream. It felt possible. The next morning, Lily woke to sunlight streaming through her apartment's thin curtains. For a moment, she lay still, wondering if last night had been a dream. The small studio apartment looked the same as always. Music books stacked on her desk, a keyboard in the corner where a dining table should be, and her uniform hanging on the closet door ready for today's lunch shift. But the envelope on her nightstand confirmed it had all been real. Inside was the $5,000 Mr. Winters had insisted she take, along with his business card. Scrawled on the back in bold handwriting were the words, "Call my assistant to discuss future performances." Lily picked up the card, turning it over in her hands. Part of her still couldn't believe what had happened. She had never played for people like that before. Wealthy, influential people who could open doors with a single phone call or recommendation letter. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Zoe. "Saw your boss posted something about you on the restaurant page." What happened last night? Confused, Lily opened her social media app and found the Sterling Hotel's page. There it was, a post from late last night with a photo of her at the piano, head bowed in concentration, fingers spread across the keys. The caption read, "Sometimes extraordinary talent hides in plain sight." A magical impromptu performance from one of our own staff members last night left our guests speechless. Unexpected talent, gear the Sterling experience. The post already had hundreds of likes and several comments, including one from the silver-haired board member. A remarkable discovery. Looking forward to seeing where her talent takes her. Lily's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered hesitantly. "Is this Lily Bennett?" asked a crisp, professional voice. "Yes, this is she. This is Patricia Walsh, Mr. Winter's executive assistant. He asked me to follow up regarding potential performance opportunities." Lily sat up straight, suddenly very awake. "Oh yes, thank you for calling. Mr. Winters hosts a charity gala at his home next Friday evening. He would like you to perform a short program, 3 to 4 pieces of your choosing. The fee would be $2,000 for the evening. Would you be interested? $2,000 for one night's work. Nearly a month's worth of restaurant shifts." Lily's heart raced. "Yes, I would be very interested," she managed to say, trying to sound professional despite her excitement. "Excellent. I'll email you the details. Mr. Winters mentioned you're a student. Will this timing conflict with your classes?" "No, I can make it work," Lily assured her, already planning to swap shifts with coworkers. After arranging the details and hanging up, Lily sat on her bed, stunned by how quickly things were moving. Just 24 hours ago, she had been worried about making rent this month. Now she had $5,000 in cash and a paying gig lined up. Her phone buzzed with a reminder: piano lesson with Dr. Wu in 2 hours. She jumped up. This was one appointment she couldn't miss, especially now. "Again, but this time listen to what you're playing," Dr. Wu instructed, tapping his pencil against the music stand. "You're rushing through the difficult passage instead of working through it." Lily nodded, repositioning her hands on the keys of Dr. Wu's grand piano. This was her weekly lesson, held in his small studio where he taught select students from the college. At 72, Dr. Wu had once been a concert pianist himself before turning to teaching. His standards were impossibly high, his criticism blunt but always constructive. She played the passage again, focusing on the tricky fingering pattern. "Better," he conceded. "Now what's this I hear about you playing for Robert Winters last night?" Lily's fingers stumbled, hitting a wrong note. "How did you know about that?" Dr. Wu smiled slightly. "The music community is smaller than you think. Catherine Chen, who manages the Sterling's weekend entertainment, is an old friend. She texted me this morning saying I've been hiding one of my better students." "It wasn't planned," Lily explained, telling him the story of the previous night's impromptu performance. Dr. Wu listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When she mentioned the upcoming gala performance, he nodded slowly. "This is an opportunity, but also a challenge," he said finally. "You'll be playing for people who regularly attend professional concerts, who have heard some of the best pianists in the world." Lily's stomach tightened with anxiety. "I know. Maybe I'm not ready for this." "Nonsense," Dr. Wu replied sharply. "You're ready for the beginning of being ready." He stood and walked to his bookshelf, pulling out several music folders. "We need to choose your program carefully. Nothing too ambitious technically, but pieces that will showcase your musicality and emotional depth." For the next hour, they sorted through music, discussing options and trying passages. Dr. Wu was more engaged than Lily had ever seen him, offering suggestions with an excitement that made her realize how significant he considered this opportunity. "We'll need to adjust your lesson schedule," he said finally. "You'll come 3 times this week instead of once. No extra charge," he added when she began to protest. "Consider it my investment in your future." As Lily gathered her music to leave, Dr. Wu placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture from the usually formal teacher. "Remember something important," he said quietly. "These wealthy people, they can open doors, yes, but only you can walk through them. Your talent belongs to you, not to anyone who discovers it." Lily nodded, grateful for his wisdom and unexpected support. The following week passed in a blur of preparation. Lily practiced whenever she wasn't working or in class, her fingers memorizing each note of her chosen program. Dr. Wu pushed her harder than ever, refining her technique and helping her understand the music at a deeper level. At the restaurant, things had changed subtly. Mr. Chen scheduled her for fewer closing shifts, allowing more practice time. Regular customers who had seen the social media posts sometimes requested to be seated in her section, treating her with a curious new respect. Her co-workers teased her good-naturedly, calling her Maestro instead of Lily. The day before the gala, a package arrived at her apartment. Inside was an elegant black dress with a note, "For tomorrow evening. Patricia Walsh." The dress was simple but beautifully made, exactly Lily's size. She tried it on, marveling at how different she looked from the server in a standard black uniform. When Friday evening arrived, Lily found herself standing outside massive iron gates, clutching her music folder. Mr. Winter's home was not just a house but an estate, a modern glass and stone mansion perched on a hillside overlooking the city. A security guard checked her name against a list and directed her to a side entrance where Patricia Walsh waited. "Right on time," Patricia noted approvingly. "Let me show you where you'll be performing." Lily followed her through corridors of modern art and minimalist furniture into a large open space where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a stunning view of the city below. In the center of the room stood a magnificent grand piano. Not just any piano, but a Steinway concert grand that probably cost more than 4 years of college tuition. "Feel free to warm up," Patricia said. "Guests will begin arriving in about 45 minutes. You'll play background music during the cocktail hour, then a featured performance after dinner." Left alone with the instrument, Lily approached it almost reverently. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, testing their weight and response. The piano was perfectly regulated, each key speaking with clarity and richness that her practice instruments could never match. She began to play softly, simple scales at first, then portions of her program. The room's acoustics were perfect, the sound blooming and surrounding her. For a moment she closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine this was her concert, her audience coming to hear her play. "It suits you," said a voice behind her. Lily turned to see Mr. Winters standing in the doorway, dressed in a tailored suit, the piano, he clarified, walking into the room. "Some people look awkward at a concert grand, too small, too tentative. You look like you belong there." "It's beautiful," Lily said honestly. "I've never played an instrument like this before." Mr. Winters nodded. "It was my mother's. She was the musical one in the family, not me. Business and technology were my strengths." He ran his hand along the piano's edge. "She would have enjoyed hearing you play. There was something vulnerable in his expression that Lily hadn't seen at the restaurant. A brief glimpse behind the billionaire's confident facade. "I'll try to do it justice," she promised. He seemed to shake off the moment of sentimentality. "My guest tonight includes several people worth impressing. The board member you met, for one. Also the dean of the conservatory's piano department and a music critic from the Tribune." Lily's mouth went dry. "You invited them specifically?" "I never miss a chance to showcase a good investment," Mr. Winters replied with a slight smile. "Don't look so terrified. I wouldn't have invited them if I didn't think you were ready." Before Lily could respond, Patricia reappeared to inform them that the first guests had arrived. Mr. Winters straightened his tie and headed toward the main entrance. "Play what moves you," he said over his shoulder. "That's what worked last time." Alone again, Lily took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. The stakes had just risen exponentially. This wasn't just a paid performance at a wealthy man's party. It was an audition for people who could change the course of her life. She looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening darkness. Somewhere out there was her tiny apartment, the restaurant where she served plates of overpriced food, the practice rooms at school with their worn pianos. And here she was, about to play a Steinway for the dean of the conservatory. She flexed her fingers and straightened her shoulders. Dr. Wu's words echoed in her mind. "Your talent belongs to you, not to anyone who discovers it." With renewed determination, Lily turned back to the piano as the sound of arriving guests grew louder in the hallway. It was time to play. As the first guest filtered into the room, Lily began to play. She started with gentle, unobtrusive pieces, Satie's Gymnopédies and selections from Schumann's Kinderscenen, music that could float like pleasant background sound for those who weren't listening closely, but reward those who were with its subtle depth. The room gradually filled with elegantly dressed people clutching champagne flutes, their jewelry catching the light as they moved. Most paid little attention to Lily at first, treating the piano as atmospheric decoration rather than a focal point. She preferred it this way for now. using these opening pieces to settle her nerves and adjust to the magnificent instrument beneath her fingers. From her position at the piano, Lily could observe without being observed. She noticed Mr. Winters moving confidently through the crowd, greeting guests with practiced charm. The silver-haired conservatory board member had arrived, deep in conversation with a distinguished woman in her 60s, who Lily guessed might be the dean of the piano department. Patricia appeared periodically at the edges of the gathering, directing staff and ensuring everything ran smoothly. She caught Lily's eye once and gave an approving nod at the music selection. As the cocktail hour progressed, Lily gradually shifted to more complex pieces, a Chopin waltz, then a Bach prelude, testing the waters with material that demanded more attention. She noticed a few guests pausing in their conversations, turning slightly toward the piano. An older gentleman with a critic's notebook in his hand moved closer, leaning against a pillar where he could watch her hands. When Patricia signaled that dinner would be served in the adjacent dining room, Lily finished her current piece and took a short break. A server handed her a glass of water. "They're impressed," the young woman whispered. "I heard the music critic asking Mr. Winters about you." Lily's hand tightened around the water glass. "What did he say? That you weren't what he expected?" The server smiled. "In a good way, I think." During dinner, Lily was shown to a small table at the side of the dining room, where she ate quickly, too nervous to fully taste the gourmet meal. Mr. Winters' instructions had been clear. After dinner came her featured performance, the real reason she was here. She glanced around at the other guests, wondering what it must be like to belong in a setting like this. Most were probably born into privilege or had climbed to it through years of success. None had likely ever worried about making rent or choosing between textbooks and groceries, yet music could bridge those worlds. Bach and Chopin didn't care about tax brackets or zip codes. The thought steadied her somehow. As dessert was being served, Patricia approached her table. "We're ready for your featured performance whenever you are," she said. "3 pieces, as discussed. The guests have been informed." Lily nodded, taking a final sip of water before following Patricia back to the main room, where the piano waited. The lights had been adjusted, slightly dimmed throughout the space but with subtle spotlighting on the piano. It was no longer background music. This was a performance. Guests began returning from dinner, finding seats in arranged chairs or standing along the walls. Mr. Winters took a position near the front, flanked by the conservatory dean and board member. The music critic sat nearby, notebook open. Lily's heart hammered in her chest as she took her place at the piano. The room quieted, all eyes now focused on her. For a moment she felt frozen, the weight of expectation almost paralyzing. Then she remembered Dr. Wu's advice during their final practice session. Begin with something that centers you. Play first for yourself, then for them. She placed her hands on the keys and began with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It wasn't the most original choice, but its familiar opening triplets felt like home to her fingers. The room disappeared as she sank into the music, allowing the haunting melody to speak through her. By the time she reached the end of the first movement, her nervousness had faded. This was what she was meant to do, not serve food or struggle through minimum wage jobs, but create moments of beauty through sound. For her second piece, she chose Debussy's Arabesque No. 1, with its flowing water-like passages. She felt herself smiling as she played, enjoying the dance of her fingers across the keys. The piano responded to her lightest touch, making it possible to create subtle shadings of volume and tone that her practice instruments could never achieve. She glanced up briefly and caught the conservatory dean leaning forward in her seat, watching intently. The critic was writing quickly in his notebook. Mr. Winters sat with arms crossed, a slight smile on his face. For her final piece, Lily had planned to play a Chopin nocturne. Safe, beautiful, appropriate. But as she finished the Debussy, she made a split-second decision. Instead, she would play her own composition, the piece she had been working on for months, showing only to Dr. Wu. It was risky, potentially presumptuous to present her own work to such a knowledgeable audience, but it was also true to who she was as a musician. Without announcement, she began to play. The piece started simply, almost hesitantly, like someone testing uncertain ground. Then it gradually built, incorporating elements of classical structure but with modern harmonies and unexpected turns. She had composed it during late nights after exhausting shifts, channeling both her frustration and her determination into the music. She poured everything into the performance. Her years of struggling to afford lessons, the humiliation of serving people who didn't see her, the joy of losing herself in music when everything else felt impossible. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence as the piece reached its climax. Not showy or technically flashy, but emotionally honest. The room was completely silent. No coughing, no shifting in seats, no whispered comments. Just Lily and the piano and a room full of people listening, really listening. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete stillness. Then the applause began, not the polite, obligatory kind, but enthusiastic, genuine appreciation. Several guests rose to their feet, including the conservatory dean. Lily stood from the piano bench, her legs slightly shaky, and bowed. The applause continued as Mr. Winters approached. "That last piece," he said. "I didn't recognize it." "It's mine," Lily admitted quietly. "I wrote it." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "You didn't mention you compose. You didn't ask," she replied. Then immediately worried she'd sounded disrespectful. But Mr. Winters laughed, a genuine laugh, not the polished chuckle he used with business associates. "Touché, Ms. Bennett." The conservatory dean joined them, extending her hand to Lily. "Dr. Helen Porter," she introduced herself. "That was quite remarkable, especially your composition." "How long have you been writing music?" "Always, I guess," Lily answered honestly. "But seriously, for about 3 years. And where are you studying currently?" "City College. I work at the Sterling Hotel to pay for tuition and private lessons with Dr. Wu." Dr. Porter's eyes lit up. "Thomas Wu? He's one of our distinguished alumni. Why haven't you auditioned for the conservatory?" Lily hesitated, unwilling to discuss financial barriers in this setting. "I'm working toward it," she said simply. The silver-haired board member appeared at Dr. Porter's side. "What she means," he interjected, "is that the conservatory's tuition is prohibitive for many talented students. It's something our board has been discussing at length." Dr. Porter nodded. "Indeed, which is why we've recently expanded our scholarship program." She handed Lily a business card. "I'd like you to audition for the winter admission cycle. Based on what I heard tonight, you would be a strong candidate for our new Emerging Artist Fellowship." Lily stared at the card in her hand, unable to fully process what was happening. The music critic approached next, introducing himself as Richard Thompson from the Tribune. "Do you have representation?" he asked bluntly. "Representation?" Lily repeated, confused. "An agent, manager, someone handling your professional engagements." No, this is actually my first paid performance." Thompson looked surprised. "Well, after my review runs on Sunday, it won't be your last." He handed her his card as well. "Call me. I know people who can help guide your career properly." As more guests came forward to compliment her playing, Lily felt as though she were in a dream. Just 2 weeks ago, she had been invisibly serving these same types of people, worried about whether their tips would cover her electric bill. When the crowd around her finally thinned, she noticed Mr. Winters watching from a distance, looking pleased but also somehow reflective. He raised his glass slightly in a private toast when their eyes met. Patricia appeared at Lily's side with an envelope. "Your payment for tonight," she said, along with Mr. Winters' thanks. "I should thank him," Lily replied, scanning the room, but he had disappeared into another group of guests. "There's something else," Patricia added, lowering her voice. "He's established a scholarship in his mother's name at the conservatory. Full tuition for promising students with financial need." She gave Lily a meaningful look. "The first recipient has already been selected." Lily's hand flew to her mouth. He can," Patricia interrupted gently. "And he has. Mr. Winters doesn't do things by half measures, especially when he finds something or someone worth investing in." As the reality of what was happening began to sink in, Lily felt tears threatening. Everything she had worked for, struggled for, sacrificed for, suddenly within reach because a billionaire had randomly decided to make her play piano for his dinner guests. Was it luck? Fate? The result of years of preparation meeting one perfect moment of opportunity. Whatever it was, she knew with absolute certainty that her life had irrevocably changed. 1 year later, Lily sat in the small backstage room, eyes closed, mentally reviewing the program she would play in just 30 minutes. The concert hall beyond the door was already filling with people, a sold-out show according to the venue manager. Hard to believe that just a year ago, she had been balancing plates of overpriced salmon and refilling water glasses. A soft knock on the door broke her concentration. 5-minute warning for photos, called the publicist who had been assigned to her for the evening. Lily smoothed down the midnight blue gown that had been selected for tonight's performance, so different from the black server's uniform that had once been her daily attire. Sometimes she still felt like she was playing dress-up, like someone might eventually discover she didn't belong in this world of concert halls and music critics. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wu. Remember to breathe between the third and fourth movements. You tend to rush when nervous. You're ready for this. She smiled at his message, still giving lessons even now. Though she had studied with renowned professors at the conservatory this past year, she had insisted on maintaining her weekly lessons with Dr. Wu. He had believed in her before anyone else did. Another text appeared, this one from her former boss. Mr. Chen. Restaurant staff watching livestream tonight. Don't mess up or no job back. Joke. Proud of you. That made her laugh out loud. After Richard Thompson's glowing review had appeared in the Tribune following Mr. Winter's gala, Lily had become something of a local celebrity. The Sterling Hotel had proudly claimed her as their own, creating a special display in the lobby with her photo and story. Mr. Chen had gruffly told her that her job would always be waiting if this music thing didn't work out, his way of showing support. The door opened, and the photographer entered along with Dr. Porter, now her academic advisor at the conservatory. Just a few quick pre-concert shots, the photographer explained, positioning them near the piano in the green room. As the camera clicked, Dr. Porter spoke quietly. The foundation board members are all here tonight. Mr. Winters as well, though he requested no special acknowledgement. Lily nodded, unsurprised. Though his scholarship had changed her life, Robert Winters had maintained a respectful distance, declining interviews about his discovery and redirecting attention to Lily's talent rather than his patronage. They had spoken only a handful of times since the gala, brief, almost business-like conversations about her progress and career development. After the photos, Dr. Porter squeezed her hand. You've done the work. Now enjoy sharing it. Left alone again, Lily opened the leather portfolio that contained her music. Not that she needed it, having memorized every note. But it was a comforting ritual to review the pages before performing. Inside was a note that hadn't been there before, handwritten on heavy stationery. From serving music to serving through music. My mother would have approved. R.W. Lily felt a tightness in her throat. The journey from that first impromptu performance to tonight's concert debut had been intense, filled with rigorous training, new opportunities, and moments of self-doubt. But Winter's simple note captured the essence of what had happened. She had always been a musician, even when wearing a server's uniform. The stage manager appeared at the door. 2 minutes, Miss Bennett. Lily took a deep breath, gathered her music, and followed him through the backstage corridor. The sounds of the audience, that distinctive pre-concert murmur, grew louder as they approached. Full house, the stage manager commented. They're even standing in the back. Through a small gap in the curtains, Lily could see the packed concert hall. This wasn't the largest venue in the city, but it was historic and acoustically perfect, a place where renowned musicians had performed for generations. And now somehow it was her turn. In the front row, she spotted Dr. Wu sitting stiffly in his formal suit. Near him was Zoe, her former roommate, who had helped her practice during those early days by listening to the same pieces over and over without complaint. Several rows back, she recognized the woman in the red dress from Mr. Winter's dinner party, the one who had initially looked at her with condescension. Tonight she had come to hear Lily play by choice, not chance. The house lights dimmed, signaling the start of the program. The stage manager nodded to Lily. You're on. As she walked onto the stage, the applause washed over her like a wave. She remembered how, as a server, she had often felt invisible, people looking past her as if she were merely part of the furniture. Now, hundreds of eyes focused on her with anticipation. She took her seat at the gleaming concert grand piano, not quite as magnificent as Mr. Winters's Steinway, but beautiful nonetheless. The audience quieted as she positioned her hands above the keys. For a moment, she flashed back to that night at the Sterling. The trembling hands, the skeptical glances, the feeling of being completely out of place. A year had passed, but the core challenge remained the same: to speak truthfully through music, to connect with listeners regardless of who they were or who she had been. She began to play. The program started with Bach, structured, mathematical, requiring precision and clarity, then Chopin, romantic and emotional. After intermission came Debussy and Ravel, impressionist works full of color and light. For the final piece, she had chosen her own composition, the same one she had played at Mr. Winter's gala, but expanded and refined under the guidance of her composition professor. The piece now told a fuller story, beginning with struggle and uncertainty, moving through moments of beauty found in unexpected places, and building to a resolution that suggested both achievement and new beginnings. As she played the final movement, Lily allowed herself to remember specific moments from the past year. The day she had moved her few belongings into student housing at the conservatory, her first master class where she had been both terrified and exhilarated, the afternoon she had returned to the Sterling Hotel as a guest rather than an employee, being served by her former co-workers with good-natured teasing. The journey hadn't been perfect. There had been jealousy from some classmates who resented her unusual path to the conservatory. Critics who suggested her success came from her discovery story, rather than genuine talent. Moments of imposter syndrome so intense she had considered quitting. But there had also been mentors who pushed her to improve, friends who celebrated her successes and her own growing confidence that she belonged in this world, not because someone had placed her there, but because she had earned her place note by note, hour by hour at the piano. The final chords of her composition resonated through the concert hall. She held the last note, letting it fade naturally into silence. Then came the applause, immediate and enthusiastic. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Flowers appeared at the edge of the stage, handed up by the house manager. Lily stood and bowed, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. As she straightened, she caught sight of Mr. Winters in the back of the hall, applauding along with everyone else but making no move to draw attention to himself. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, and he gave a small nod of acknowledgement, not of ownership or patronage, but of mutual respect between two people who recognized the value of what had been created. For her encore, Lily chose something simple: Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece she had played that first night when a billionaire had challenged a server to prove herself. As the familiar notes filled the hall, she reflected on the strange poetry of life, how a moment of potential humiliation had transformed into opportunity, how being seen had changed everything. The day after her impromptu performance at the Sterling, she had looked up the meaning of the word serendipity, a fortunate discovery made by accident. That's what people called her story when they wrote about it in articles and interviews. A serendipitous discovery, a lucky break, a Cinderella tale. But as her fingers moved through the gentle arpeggios of the Debussy, Lily knew it was both more and less magical than that. Luck had played a part, yes, being in the right place at the right time, catching the attention of someone with the power to open doors. But those doors would have remained closed if she hadn't been preparing all along, practicing in empty classrooms after hours, studying with Dr. Wu when she could barely afford lessons, writing music in the early morning before her shifts began. The final notes of Clair de Lune hung in the air like a question. Where would she go from here? What would she create next? The future stretched before her, full of possibilities that once seemed impossible. As the applause rose again, Lily took her final bow of the evening. Tomorrow there would be reviews to read, calls to return, decisions to make about recordings and future performances. The work would continue, harder in some ways now that expectations were higher. But tonight, in this moment, she allowed herself to simply feel the joy of being exactly where she was meant to be, no longer serving music on the side, but serving through music at center stage. The journey that had begun with one song in a restaurant had led her home.